All right, welcome to episode 4 of Mike's Big Marshall Folder Exploration Journey. And no, I don't know how long I'm going to keep trying to number these episodes to keep them in some sort of order. But in the first couple of episodes, we looked at a number of cold steel folders in the 5.5-inch blade range, specifically a couple of Voyager XLs, the Vaquero, and then we moved on to the large Espada, which is actually the small Espada when you think about it. But then I get confused by the nomenclature because the large Espada, which is the small Espada, is the same size as the XL Voyagers. But in the episode devoted to the large Espada, we teased that this episode would be devoted to the XL. And yeah, that's quite an upsizing. Now, a lot of other YouTubers have reviewed this knife, and those reviews have ranged from outright awe to straight up ridicule, and surprisingly often both at the same time, making fun of how big and edgelord this knife is, but also they can't deny how sturdy, durable, well-made it is, and that yes, it might have some real potential utility use. And we'll put some of that to the test today, but mostly I'm going to try to give it, well, my unique Marshall perspective. So let's upsize, shall we? All right. I'm going to try to start this conversation off as objectively as possible by talking about carry dimensions, folded dimensions. And yes, I'm going to demonstrate pocket carry and deployment later, but the first question you all need to ask yourselves is, are you allowed to legally carry something like this in your area? Can you even legally own it? Now, where I live on this side of my country, there are mostly no restrictions on blade length for the carry of folding knives. Now, there are some cities I do need to be aware of where there are blade length restrictions, but most of the places I go, there aren't any on folding knives. And this is where we reflect on the wise words of Jorge Prina that inspired this series, that the best Marshall knife for you is not only the one you have on you when you need it, and I hope you never need it for that, but the one that you carry the most and use the most often for the most things. Therefore, you are the most comfortable and familiar with it. And yeah, last year we looked at a lot of big fixed blade knives that I added to my collection, trained with, spent a lot of time with, used them for a lot of things, but because of restrictions on the carry of fixed blades where I live, I have to leave them home almost all the time. So what's going out in the world with me, it's going to be a folder. So here I am, after spending all that time with those big fixed blades, trying to figure out what is the biggest folding knife I can comfortably, practically carry on my person and maybe actually put to non-Marshall practical utility use to sort of justify me carrying it around. I hope the only Marshall use you ever get out of any of your tools is in training and not in real life. But that also influenced, okay, why did I get the cheaper G10 version? And we talked about it in the video we did on the large version, that yes, some of it was being cheap. I didn't want to spend twice as much money on the premium version if I wasn't sure I was going to like it, carry it, use it. Yeah, I figured I'd get the cheaper versions and test drive them, and if I really liked them, I'd save up my money and get the premium versions, and then maybe one day do that side-by-side comparison. And speaking of which, yeah, I made some decisions regarding carry in that equation. My assumptions were that the G10 versions would be slimmer, flatter carry than the premium versions, and lighter. Again, if we ever have the premium versions, we can compare them side by side and see exactly how much difference there is. But there was another reason, and that was optics. The premium versions have the shiny aluminum bolsters and the shiny steel pocket clip. If I'm carrying the thing, I am concerned about optics, which is the main reason that I don't carry A fixed blade, the one way I can carry it is fully open carry, but I don't want those kind of eyes on me all the time. So carrying something this huge, how much of this is sticking out of your pocket? Okay, in the large version, if it was the premium version, I'd have shiny bolster, shiny pocket clip, and that would probably get me attention I wouldn't want. Here, black pocket clip, and that's how much is sticking out of my pocket. Yeah, there's some exposed steel, but it's not too bad. This one, no, yeah, there's a whole lot more sticking out above the pocket, including a lot more steel. But if I added in shiny bolster, shiny pocket clip, oh yeah, it would get a lot of eyes on me. At least that's what I'm thinking. So going with the subtler version. Now you can also get a blackened blade, which would probably blend into my outfit even better. You can also get different color handle scales based on your preference or what blends into your wardrobe. But all right, let's talk about those practical dimensions. All right, before I give you the carry dimensions, let me give you a couple of quick visual references. And yeah, we are going to be making lots of comparisons between the L and the XL model. The large model I described as being similar in size, including carry size, to XL Voyagers, including the Vaquero. And I also described these as being pretty much the biggest folders I could practically carry in a back pants pocket. But when I line these up, you're going to see that is significant difference. And I'll put some side-by-side pictures up. But yeah, the XL's not going in the back pocket. I will talk about what your other carry options might be. But one other comparison quick. Going back to the Voyager reviews, I described how all the time I spent with the big fixed blade knives kind of skewed my sense of proportion. I used to consider a 4-inch bladed folder, in this case we're talking about the large size Voyager, as being a big folder. And now I consider it maybe medium large-ish. But this might be the longest folder you're legally allowed to carry where you are. Maybe you're stuck with a restriction that's even shorter than that. But lining these up, all right, yeah, I can probably put 2 of the large Voyagers in the profile of the XL Espada and still probably have room to spare. What are those actual dimensions? All right, large Espada, length tip to tip, 7 inches, 17.5 centimeters. This is 9.5 inches, 24.5 centimeters. Widest point, okay, this has a similar width to the Voyager XL clip and the Vaquero, 2.25 inches, pretty pocket filling, 5.75 centimeters. Here you're going up to 2.75 inches, so a half an inch wider, 7 centimeters. Thickness, both of these models exactly the same at 13.5 millimeters, which is impressively slimmer than the Voyager XLs, which were more like 17 millimeters. So there's a difference you can feel. Also materials. You've got the flat-sided G10, which is grippy without being uncomfortable. There is no reinforcing liner under that G10 other than the steel of the triad lock, and then you've got a full-length aluminum spacer for the rest of it. But we'll definitely look at durability here in a second. However, I pointed out that even though we're talking about similar size between the large Espada and the XL Voyagers, the difference in materials made a significant difference in weight. For carry, those Voyagers tend to run about 7.5 ounces. This is 9.3 ounces, 264 grams. The XL, though, takes that up to 15 ounces, 425.25 grams. So if you're thinking about trying to carry one of these, hopefully that was some useful perspective, and I'll give you more as we go forward, but all right. Speaking of more, let's talk about the blade. Time to talk about the blade. And yes, I'm going to be making more comparisons, not only to its little brother, but I have to make comparisons between this and other large to medium large fixed blade knives, because this is the size and function class it's in. It's what it performs like. Now, like the Voyagers we've taken a look at and its little brother, this one also comes in AUS 10A steel that my test files are saying is somewhere slightly above 60 HRC. Originally came with a stonewash finish, and some of that is sort of polished off with use and cleaning, and you'll see a little staining on it because I put it to use doing lots of things. Packaging, cardboard, yard work, and yeah, a lot of food prep as well. And I still plan on one day doing that food prep with big Marshall knives video, so stay tuned for that. But you've got really fine secondary edge bevel on a flat saber grind, wonderfully keen swept back clip point profile, very sharp but reinforced tip. We'll see how that performs. Pronounced belly that is riding kind of high on the blade profile, exactly where I like it in, again, my fixed blade Bowies. So performance-wise, yeah, slicey, carvy, choppy, exactly the same as the best of them. Here's some real thick triple wall cardboard here to sail through. Yeah. Gonna run my usual impact and durability tests, and like the other cold steel fixed blades we're looking at, I expect it will laugh at all of those tests. So those tests are really going to be more about how those impacts feel in terms of comfort and security of grip, how it translates impact back into me, and might also give you a sense of how it performs in some of the harder jobs. But let's talk about the specs of the blade. All right, so little brother, 5.5 inches, 13.5 centimeters. Now you're taking this up to 7.5 inches, 19 centimeters. Yeah, in the class of similar, what I consider a medium-large fixed blade. But given what I've been kind of calling the enhancements, the options available in the design of the grip, depending on where you're gripping it, you can add inches to that functional blade or reach, making it perform like an even bigger knife. And we'll talk about that in handling. Now, width of belly at the widest point, little brother is 1 5/8 inches, 4 centimeters. This one is 2 inches, 5 centimeters wide, about right there. Thickness though, okay, just like the XL Voyagers and the little brother, the stock they're using on these at the spine is 3.75 millimeters thick. Now, one final measurement I want to give you, just to give you, again, a sense of proportion, and we'll talk about this in carry and handling. Unfolded overall length, if you're doing the math, you already know we're talking 17 inches, 43 centimeters. So consider that. But let's go ahead and roll in the footage of the impact and durability test. We'll talk about how it did, and then the part you've probably been waiting for, my Marshall impressions. So how'd it do in the tests? As expected, awesome. But I've already been using it for a while, so I had a sense of how it was going to do. And a lot of other YouTubers, including Cold Steel, have put this to a lot more abuse than I did. This was just kind of a sampling to see how it would do and how it would feel doing it. I have put it to use cutting up packaging, cardboard, lots of food prep. For fine carving, I do love to choke up on it nice and high, and I love pressing my thumb on that thumb plate for leverage. In this grip for those utility uses, yeah, it's great. But my first test is probably the most martial of the tests, and that's stabbing and thrusting into lapels. Stab him. Stab him is multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of brown paper backed up by wood, and I used lots of different grips because I had lots of options. So forward grip. Started up high, worked myself down a stage, worked myself down another stage. Now the further down I got, the more awkward it sort of got, but it was still very usable, also very comfortable. I didn't have any uncomfortable kickback in any of those grip positions, no slippage to speak of, and penetration into target. Yeah, like any other clip point Bowie of this geometry, really impressive. Now I also went ahead and tried reversing the blade towards me North American Bowie style, at least in the high grip. And unlike those smaller Voyagers and the Espada, this actually didn't feel too bad doing that. Not the most natural grip, but there are certain things that the way this tip angle engages with the target and its cutting action going into the target media will do for you stabbing in this grip. Now reverse grip. All right, again, I started mostly blade facing away from me, started high, worked myself down one step, and then worked myself down two steps. And for me, reverse grip, the longer a blade gets in general, the more awkward it is for me, and then add certain things about, you know, the grip shape and point of balance and such that we'll talk about. It wasn't working for me so well, but yeah, here and here just fine. I also, yeah, tried it like that, at least in the high grip, and it wasn't too bad, but again, shape of grip, not only curvature of the handle, but, you know, shapes down here getting in my way. Just kind of creates an awkward angle and grip. Now, I could certainly make it work. Say if I pick the knife up like this in an emergency, could I use it? Yeah, absolutely I could. But next test, potentially abusive, hacking and slashing into a piece of hard bamboo at different angles to see if I can intentionally induce chip or roll in a fragile edge. And just like all of my other cold steel knives, this knife laughed at that test and bit impressively into the bamboo. I used forward grip at different grip positions. I also used reverse grip at a couple of different grip positions. Yeah, did really good. Felt good taking those impacts. Take any damage? No. Loosen up at all? Absolutely not. So next test, carving and chopping into some boards. And as I stated, when I'm doing that fine carving, I do like to choke up and press my thumb, but I also tried it down here. And yeah, it does perform like a similar sized and shaped fixed blade Bowie knife. So very good for all those uses. Chopping. Started with my grip this high and worked my way down, and yeah, the lower I got on the grip, the more chopping, leverage, and penetration I got out of it. It was really impressive doing that. Was it uncomfortable doing that? Not in terms of impact, but yeah, the lower I got, gripping it down here, just talk about the reasons why that doesn't feel secure for me here. Wasn't bad at all, though. As a chopping tool that performs like, well, a knife with an even bigger blade profile or other kind of chopping tool. So this could indeed be something that you could fold up, stick in a pocket, stick in a pack, and take with you out in the field to do the things that you could, well, you might need a bigger tool to do, or, you know, smaller, finer, sharp tool to do. So yeah, I would say lots of potential uses for this, practically speaking. Let's talk about the Marshall. All right, down to the unflattering waistline view again, so we can talk about carry and deployment. Now, when I covered the Voyager XL series and the Espada Large, I mentioned that that's about the longest folding knife I can carry in a standard size back pants pocket. So the XL is not going in my back pocket, but you can see it fits perfectly well in my front pocket. In the G10 version, it's very slim, very flat carrying. A lot of times I'm not really even noticing it. So I'm surprisingly comfortable. It is riding a bit high. Would a blackened blade make it a bit less visible? Possibly. Certainly if I got the fancier shiny version, that would grab a lot of, well, potentially uncomfortable attention from the wrong people in the wrong places. But I've actually been carrying both of these around in public for, well, a couple of weeks now, kind of like an Espada die show, and I haven't noticed any, well, uncomfortable attention. It does sort of just blend in to the kind of black ensemble. You know, it sort of fits in with my wardrobe. Also, you know, if I'm worried about somebody staring at it, I could easily cover it up just a little bit without looking like that's what I'm doing. So carry, better than expected. Deployment, well, that Emerson hook is facing right into the corner of my pocket, so I can grab it and, yeah, catch it pretty consistently each time. Now, other YouTubers have pointed this out. If I am drawing it with, well, the blade kind of vertically, it's going to swing out behind me. So if I'm wearing any kind of cover garment, it's very likely to snag, and yes, you're probably going to wind up having to repair or replace your cover garment. So what I've been doing for safety is making sure I rotate the knife more horizontally and then deploy it so the blade is swinging downwards. And yeah, very consistent in doing so. Now you'll notice that as I'm drawing it, my hand tends to be either below that lower projection or on it in kind of that sub-hilt orientation. So drawing it in a hurry, it's coming out in, shall we say, short sword mode. And in an emergency, that's what exactly I might need. We'll talk about that in handling. So again, working a whole lot better than I thought it would as a carry option for a really sizable Bowie style knife. Now I do have one other option I've worked out for basically shirt and pants. I could just slip it into my waistband Facone carry style and use the clip it to my pants. It carries pretty flat, but I don't necessarily have that positive grab for the Emerson style hook. If I again twist it kind of like I was doing with the Espada large in my back pocket, I can sort of make it happen, but not as consistently as carrying it in my pocket. And since carrying it in my front pocket is just perfectly workable and comfortable, that's where it's been. Before I give you my martial perspectives, I feel like I need to give you some visual perspectives on what that grip length and its features do for your functional blade reach. And we talked about it with the large version. 5.5-inch blade. When I'm choked all the way up at the top for close work, that's what I'm getting. But all I have to do is move my index finger into that first groove, and it's adding a good inch to my blade reach. If I take it one step further and hook my pinky below that projection like an upside down subhilt, and now I'm getting about 2 inches of extra functional blade reach. So lining up my hands between the Espada large and my 7.5-inch Gold Rush Bowie, you're going to see very similar reach, but also blade profile for use. But advantage Espada, I can't fold this up and put it in my pocket and take it places with me. What happens though if I go up to the XL version? All right, now we're starting with a 7.5-inch blade, so choked all the way up at the top for close work. Yeah, pretty similar in blade length and yes, profile to 7.5-inch Gold Rush. But all I have to do is put my index finger in that top groove and the Gold Rush starts looking pretty small. How much is that adding? Well, about 1.5 inches. Here's my 9-inch Cold Steel Marauder. Line my hands up. Yeah, very similar blade reach, very similar blade profile. What about the full-size Gold Rush, which is similar size to a Western W49? All right, so that's a 9.5-inch blade. It does have some length over the Espada, but all right, all I have to do is put my pinky below that projection, reverse sub-hilt style, and now, well, the Espada starts looking a bit longer in comparison. How low can I go? How long can I get? All right, so if I grip it all the way down here with my index finger on the projection, well, like a proper sub-hilt, and then line it up to my 12-inch 1917. Okay, the 1917 still has about 3/4 of an inch on it. But all I would really have to do to equalize that is move my whole hand below that lower projection. And now the Espada is actually shaved about 1 centimeter longer. But one thing I'm going to have to give to all the fixed blade knives, and it's not masked for chopping because that varies across the different models, it's going to be point of balance. Where's the point of balance on this thing? It's right here at the top of the index finger groove. So if I'm gripping it up here, that feels awesome. If I'm gripping it one step down, reverse sub-hilt style, point of balance compared to the top of my hand, that's not bad at all either. I definitely feel the change in leverage though. Moving down to sub-hilt position. All right, point of balance versus the top of my hand. It's starting to feel, well, a little bit more like a chopper hatchet, which is great for using it like a chopper or a hatchet. So not too bad, but this plays into why I'm discouraged from gripping it all the way down here. This is very thin. Also tapers down. You do have a hook down here, but the way it tapers down towards the end and nothing to really hook my fingers, doesn't feel very secure. And then add in, well, how far the balance point is from the top of my hand, and that just doesn't feel good at all. So, Marshall impressions. If you've been following the channel, you probably heard me extol the virtues, at least in my mind, of the big belly clip point Bowie, both for utility use and martial application. And this does indeed check off a lot of those boxes in a package I can fold up and take places I can't take a fixed blade. But let me first address the reviewers who consider this knife ridiculous. Optics-wise, I agree with you. It's huge, excessively so. And no, I would not feel comfortable whipping this thing out in public view. But it's certainly proven itself as a useful, durable tool for a lot of different applications. What about the Marshall? Well, this section is going to be a bit long because there's a whole lot to unpack here, a lot of options on the table. I'm going to start with forward grip and what I'm going to consider the highest grip for martial application, not choked all the way up here for close use, but with my index finger in that top groove. For me, this is the grip that feels the best with this build. It's comfortable, balanced, and yeah, just moves for me. So big hewing cuts and slashes and chops, and yeah, rocking in my hand to make those snapping cuts. Oh, very quick and responsive. Plus, I get that clip point tip around corners and stabbing or straight in line with my arm. And you will see me shift my grip. In other videos, I've recommended against using a saber grip, keeping your thumb wrapped around for security. But since I've spent so much time using these knives in this sort of grip, yeah, I am habitually bringing my thumb up into a saber grip when I'm bringing it more straight line in line with my arm. And this is slim enough and grippy enough that I feel pretty secure doing so. Don't feel like I'm taking anything away from my grip doing that. What about other uses? It doesn't have a sharpened clip point, but I can still bring that hook of a tip around corners in back cuts and it will still be effective for me. It's still going to do damage to a target. Now I have also tried using it edge towards me North American Bowie style. In the high grip, it's not too bad. And I can take advantage of that tip angle on target and how that belly cuts into the target media when you stab this way. So those options are there. What about blade length and mass? 4, all right. Pairing. Now, 7.5-inch blade I wouldn't consider long enough, but by adding that extra reach of where I'm grabbing it, it functions like almost a 9-inch blade, which crosses that line into something I might feel like I could parry with, even though it doesn't have any real hand protection to speak of. But what it does have is durability and mass that I feel like I could strike with the flat, planazo style strikes, or the spine, which is also something I can do with the edge reversed. All right, so I can take advantage of that. The bill's going to hold together, and it's going to be reasonably effective. When I choke down, though, certain things are going to maximize at the cost of certain other things. So down here with my pinky below that projection, reverse subhilt, we'll call it, I've got more reach, more blade presence for the slashing, chopping, and yeah, snap cutting. I still have good tip control. Don't feel very comfortable with it turned around the edge the other way. But yeah, more blade mass presence length for parrying, flat striking, spine striking, hooking with the back of the tip. Yeah. I am getting a little discomfort though in those responsive quick actions about right here. So I feel like I might need to do a little rounding in here, but it's not terrible. Now getting my hand all the way down here in what I'm going to call the lower subhilt grip, now it's moving like a much bigger chopper. Maybe not so much like a knife at all, unless I'm talking about a kukri. Feels a lot like a kukri in certain ways like this. Also maybe like a small hatchet or tomahawk. And yes, we are going to start talking about hatchets and tomahawks, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, if that's something that appeals to you, you might find that you really like this. And with my finger hooked over that, well, we'll call it a subhilt at this point, it feels reasonably secure. But going below that, I just don't feel like I have enough grip, enough control over the weapon. So this is probably as low as I'm going to go. What about reverse grip? All right, that means we have to talk about transitions. Way too much going on down here for me to pinch flip the thing. So the safe and sane choice would be doing it in two hands at all times. But if you've been following the channel, you know me. I'm probably going to fall back on old habits. It is slim enough and grippy enough that I feel comfortable doing so, but I don't recommend doing it. Don't try this at home. But when it settles into reverse grip, all right, in what I'm going to call the high grip here, or maybe it's the low grip, depending on your perspective, this also feels really good. I've got good belly for slashing. I've got a good hooking action on the tip for stabbing. Reversing the edge towards me, I could make some use out of that. It's not the worst thing. We'll talk about the biggest drawback here, and you might already be seeing it. But okay, if I choke down, or is it up to, let's call it subhilt position, I get a little bit more reach. But as I've mentioned in reverse grip, I don't necessarily feel better with a longer blade doing this. The longer the blade gets, actually, the more awkward it feels. And that really becomes an issue if I go all the way down here and kind of reverse subhilt it by hooking my pinky here. Yeah, I can secure my thumb on the back of the spacer, but that feels like I'm reverse wielding a sword, which is something I really hate doing. And don't feel a lot of usefulness doing so. Could I make some use out of this if I happen to grab it this way? Sure. Would I do so by choice? No. But let's go ahead and talk about what I consider the biggest potential barrier to training. And, okay, if you're considering this a big knife, you're used to big knives probably ending about right there. So all this extra stuff sticking out the back in either forward or reverse grip. Does this ever get in my way? Do I entangle myself? Do I accidentally clock myself with it if I'm not paying attention? Yeah. But, all right, so a traditional Navaja of this size would have all this business hanging out the end of it. The other thing this potentially reminds me of, though, is something like a Burmese da, right, that would have a lot of handle sticking out below your hand. And other than just the counterbalance, what other uses do you put that to? Could you, for instance, in the forward grip, hook with it, or strike with it, or punch with it? And no, it's not sharp, but given that curvature, the thing it's reminding me of, those deer horns on my wall. Yeah, so I have a basis to build on there for technique. Reverse grip, same. Could I hook with it? Could I hook with it? Could I strike with it? Maybe. There's some potential there. so it's not just a thing in my way. I might be able to make some actual use out of it. All right, let's cut it off here. Get our conversation going. If you have any of the Espadas or the other big cold steel folders, let me know what you think about yours. I have not revealed the full roster yet that we're going to cover. And as I'm making the videos, I'm also adding more knives to the collection. So yeah, this is a series that is extending itself as we go forward. So we'll see where we go. But until next time, thanks as always for watching, following my journey, subscribing to the channel, adding to our conversation, and I hope to see you back for, well, probably the next episode, not sure yet, but I think it's got to be time to compare the G10 Espada, at least the large version, to its, well, fancier brother.